Good morning, everyone. Hugo, man, thank you so much for joining us today for our Flare Forward episode. We're super excited to have you with us, and to be honest, like I said, we hope to make it a lot different than what you're used to having as a space. So, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, Whale. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. All right. So, Will, do you want to say something?
No, just hello to everybody, and thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have to have you, Hugo, with us.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to start this off a little different. Hopefully, it starts off fun. That's our goal, and really kind of roll us into really some good conversations. So, this question comes from our community member John Snow. I'm going to give you three options, Hugo. So just so you know, uh, he would like to know boxers, brief, or we can give you a pass.
Pass.
All right. Are you a vodka or gin in your martini? From
Gin.
Nick LeBlanc. Gin, Nick, it's gin.
Gin
Awesome.
and gin and dirty.
Oh, nice, nice.
All right, Hugo, let's go to the questions. So, my first question for you is: How do you see yourself? How do you see crypto affecting your life in 5 years from now?
Tough one. Um, obviously it affects my life very, very dramatically as co-founder of a protocol. Um, but I guess you're probably looking for something a bit bigger than that in terms of something visionary. But I must admit, I think I'll be releasing Flare V2, kind of my vision for what where we're going relatively soon, um, based on a lot of work the team's been doing, and we're pretty far ahead on that. So I've been thinking a lot about the space, and I must admit it's quite easy to get sort of depressed with the space, but then you realize, okay, well, why is this sort of not um, not conforming to expectations of what what you would like? And I'll give you some examples. So, for instance, seen a lot of meme coins, a lot of meme coin pumps, just an endless number of meme coins issued, and I think there's validity in a few meme coins. They're fun, rally around them, but it really turned into something quite unsavory. Um, and then you've seen a lot of AI hype, but frankly, you know protocols that I wouldn't touch, and very, very high valuations for things that really don't seem to be creating much of value. So I really put like where I think crypto needs to go down to a couple of things. Well, one, I think it needs chain abstraction. I don't think you should have to switch your wallet around, um, go to an exchange, buy a token for a new chain, um, mess around with that chain, then bridge value to that chain. It's just a nightmare, and it's like you know too much too much hassle. Um, and this keeps a lot of people out. Then I think you need compute. Um, I think there's a danger that a lot of what DeFi, a lot of what has been built in DeFi, kind of isn't really a viable product outside of this industry because it's kind of like a toy. Um, so I think we need compute. I think we need automation because I think we need to be. I don't think using a blockchain should be a full-time job. And then, of course, we need data, which Flare already does really, really well, and will continue to get better at. Um, so in 5 years, I'd like to see real products that I use on a daily basis, that everyone uses on a daily basis to manage their money. I like to be able to click a button to get a portfolio of things that I want to hold. I'd like to be able to set automated, targets for things, whether it's financial or perhaps hopefully other things. social would be interesting. So affecting my life, it affects my life regardless. But in terms of how I'd like to see it affecting my life, I'd like it to be a hell of a lot easier.
Nice. So I got a question here that kind of a while back, and there's still a lot of clamor about it, but I'm really curious, not so much like the information, but when you posted, your curiosity about what the community thought about moving to the US, did you receive what did you think of the community's feedback? I mean, overall. Not asking if you're moving, I'm just asking what you kind of felt like, what did you feel about the community feedback?
It was very sweet, but it was also a little, it's like, hey, we've been told, not necessarily truthfully, that American coins will not have capital gains tax. There's no evidence that that's the case yet. And so it's please benefit me by moving to another continent. I get it, and I think as soon as I see something of substance with regards to some economic or regulatory, proposals for projects that are based out of the US, I'll respond accordingly. Certainly never going to hold back the project, because I don't want to uproot myself and my family. But do I think I'm going to move to US? I guess that's open for judgment. I think there are things in the US that I absolutely love, and there are things like gun crime, which is something that I'm not used to as someone that lives in the UK and Dubai. Although the UK, you can no longer say that, unfortunately, because we have a awful government who must be booted out as soon as possible.
I thought it was
Okay,
nice out there.
Hugo.
Go ahead, Will.
Okay, Hugo, so coming back to the community, in our last call, you were explaining how you're trying to be a bridge between the economics and the technical. And my question to you would be, if you are that bridge, what would you like, or how do you see the community being part of that equation? Because I think there has to be also a retail or community aspect to a blockchain that works. I think a strong community is very important for any blockchain. How do you see, or what would you like to see more from us, the community, to support you in your vision and to grow together?
Yeah, so to put that in context, when we were chatting, it's like my role at Flare is that I'm the one with the more sort of economic mind. I'm the least good at engineering of anyone at Flare. I'm quite good at working on protocols, but when it comes down to actually building, um, protocols, that's not my role. My role is to sort of set an economic vision, define things like the F assets, help define things like the FTSO and the FTC, help define things like the staking product. So to give you an example of how the staking product that is being built by a third party, a very, very exciting third party, came about as I was sitting in the office um, with some of our engineers. They were talking about a thing they were building in order to improve the F assets. So something that we will be talking about when we talk about F assets v2, which is an upcoming paper that will be revolutionary for F assets. But they were talking about the technology that they were looking into for that, and my immediate understanding was, okay, well, we can repurpose that technology or also use that technology for many, many other things. At which point I started thinking about, okay, well, there's this thing called EigenLayer on Ethereum. There's this thing called Babylon on Bitcoin. It allows you to stake. In Ethereum's case, it allows you to stake, essentially restake staked ETH. In Bitcoin's case, it allows you to stake Bitcoin. And the purpose of both these platforms is you stake these assets, whether it's staked ETH or Bitcoin, in order to secure in a proof of stake manner some other platform, whether it's a new blockchain or some kind of service. You can stake your assets to a provider like on Flare, like an infra provider, in order to get a share of the yield that is emitted by that platform, i.e., the tokens that are emitted by that platform for essentially providing your security. I immediately went away and worked with a few members of the teams, draft up a staking proposal. We put that out, found a fantastic partner to do that. That's kind of my role. My role is to take our technology, to think about what technology should be built, and to work with the team to go from, okay, this is on paper, how do we make it real? And what are the use cases? And in terms of the community, I think I've seen a massive step up from many members of the community in terms of trying to explain Flare to the rest of the community and to people that are not already Flare community, but trying to explain, why Flare is interesting. And you're gonna have I'm afraid to say you're going to have a lot more on your plate rather soon.
I think you're right. And I think the funniest thing about Flare is it is so complex that, we talk to certain people, actually, a lot of people are siloed or segmented into certain ways they like to use Flare. Whereas we're out there, I know Will and I, we're out there just screwing it up on each item and figuring out, how does it work? What do they think it should do? Does it do what they think it should do? And so we have a lot of fun with that. But I think you're right, as we even some of the more stable community members are very locked into how they like to use Flare. So that's very interesting. You were kind of
I
talking.
think
Go ahead.
I think one of the things that we're going to be talking about when Flare v2 comes up is one of the reasons why I talk about compute, i.e., the ability to, in a trustless way, handle large amounts of compute, not directly on the blockchain, but still get the things you want from a blockchain, which is decentralization, trustlessness, and a lack of censorability. Is that part of that complexity comes from the fact that protocols built directly on a blockchain are kind of clunky, and they're clunky because the blockchain has, whether it's Flare or any blockchain, whether it's Solana, Sui, whatever, has really, really limited ability to do compute. And so you end up with products that don't look like what we're used to in Web 2. The thing that excites me about where Flare goes next is we have a route to removing those shackles.
Nice, nice. And I think it's interesting too, because there are certain things that are created kind of out of nowhere. Like, I mean, I go to Cyclofinance, which is a very unique tool with so many sides to it. I know lots of people struggle with it, even though it's a very awesome tool to use once you get the hang of it.
It's a fantastic, fantastic example of a product that could only be built on a blockchain.
It- it-
Okay, Hugo. So last time we talked, you asked us how we use Flare. So my question to you is, how does Hugo use Flare, like in the day to day?
So did a lot of delegation, a lot of staking. Play around with the DEX is a bit. I'm always conscious that I should not obviously, I have a lot of Flare, as is obvious and well known. So I'm very careful not to, move markets around. I've had a go on, perps. I'm really interested in opening up the market maker side of perps, so that there's two sides of perps. You can take a position, or you can be essentially take the other side of that. People taking the position, which is being the market maker. And frankly, there's like most levered aspects of finance. Most of the people on the other side lose money consistently, predictably. Um, and so being the market maker in that role is, generally, although not guaranteed, has a positive expected value. So I'm like, the moment you can only be market maker in Flare, but I'm so interested in opening that market up to FXRP, FBTC, FDOGE, those kind of things, so that you can have markets that are denominated in those assets, and people can deploy their value into that protocol as effectively the market maker.
So, how do you see DeFi affecting the market dynamics or bull cycles? Because I feel like we're coming to a point where people might rather have consistent yield than trying to be swinging from back and forth, but that also creates less self pressure. So, how do you see DeFi in the near future affecting how we think about bull cycles or market cycles?
Well, I don't know if I think those aren't two sides, aren't the same side of the same coin. I mean, yield is a net output of DeFi, right? Depending on how you structure it. The sort of sophisticated strategies for using DeFi are effectively yield strategies. The sort of less sophisticated strategies are basically taking, outright risk. What I think what interests me is building a sufficiently sophisticated DeFi ecosystem such that I can basically create a yield strategy out of a bunch of outright risk strategies, if that makes sense to you, right? So, let me try and walk you through one of those kind of things. Like, let's say I have an asset, like, let's say, Bitcoin. I'll be less contentious here because most people are XRP focused here. So, Bitcoin, and I borrow dollars against it, right? What am I now? I'm sort of long Bitcoin, short dollars, sort of levered my position. Now I need to net out my position so that I'm neutral Bitcoin. So I can go to a perps dex and take a perps position against that. I've got my dollars. I've used some of those dollars to take negative exposure on Bitcoin to hedge out my Bitcoin position. Now I've got some dollars left. Now I can go and get yield on those dollars. That's an example of like a more sophisticated DeFi strategy that you can do, and that's ultimately what all the institutions are doing. They're not taking huge directional bets.
That is very interesting. I've never even thought of it like that.
I mean,
I think I heard some.
there's an endless number of strategies, and you need to put them all on a spreadsheet and think about them. But off the top of my head, that's like one strategy.
Yeah, so I remember hearing, I think it was David Schwartz talking about like less extreme yields and more something that can be consistent and sustainable for the long term. And I think that that's kind of where we're going. I mean, one thing that I see with DeFi is that in a way we want a bigger market, but at the same time, the bigger the market, the less incentives or the less rewards that we get. So it's kind of weird how we want a bigger market, but at the same time, the less people to know, the bigger the rewards you can get. So I don't know. Sometimes it's interesting to observe those dynamics.
I mean, look. Ultimately, all of finance comes down to yield, right? Like, everyone's trying to get return on their capital. Very few people are trying to take a directional bet.
So I got a kind of question. So what is it like in the day of Hugo? Like, what is your day like? I mean, it's got to be pretty manic. So what is that like?
Get up about 8 a.m. It's quite late. I used to get up much earlier, but tend to work till 10 or 11. Let's get up around 8. I've recently decided to try to become an expert in making espresso. So I fiddle around with my coffee machine and my grinder until I get something that doesn't taste like cat's piss. Have breakfast. It's kind of I'm quite groggy in the morning, so have another espresso. Get to my desk. I've probably already spent half an hour like staring at my phone at this point. Looking at where the market is. Who destroyed whatever pump we had yesterday. Like Sunday or Saturday or Sunday night. I can't remember which one. When Trump, it was Sunday night my time.
Yep.
When Trump announced that, it was like, ooh, it's an interesting rally, and then straight back down. So check in on what's going on. Check in on what's happening on X. Check my Slack. Try to avoid the 400 channels of questions which I don't have the energy to answer. Get on with one of the 5 or 6 things that are important to me that I generally have on a daily basis. So, at the moment, I'm trying to write up the Flare version 2 vision based on a lot of work we've been doing. It's taking me a long time to get the words right so that it's both accurate but also understandable. We have white papers that are coming alongside that, but the white papers are kind of presume a lot of knowledge. So I'm trying to break down, like, okay, so what is this doing and why is it interesting? That's like a big one for me at the moment. Talk to the teams about the various protocols, of course, talking to teams about their Fassets. Talk with my co-founder, Nairi, most days around strategy, around what's happening, where's the engineering team at, what's the schedule for XYZ, that kind of stuff. Usually have calls with either Amy from marketing or Philip from DevRel, Vanessa Bridge, Eshwar, who are product people, Vika, who runs QA. Probably 2 to 3 calls with external parties, that kind of stuff. Try to fit work in between. Go to the gym. Obviously, do some eating at some point. Go on a walk with my 8-month-old child and my wife. Come back, do a bit more work, and then watch TV, and then pass out.
You got time for TV in there? That's impressive. Because I know it's like 10 o'clock your time now, right now, right?
I got quite into Yellowstone.
Nice, a nice
It very much made me want to move to rural America.
I don't know how you'll handle the snow from Dubai. I'm just throwing that out there.
Oh no, I love skiing.
Oh, all right. Oh man.
Hey Hugo, so I have another question for you. What has been your biggest lesson in this past, what is it, 4 or 5 years? Like,
Oh.
what are some things that you have learned and that you would like to share with us?
I think that probably one of the biggest things I've learned is that I never really understood I've never been one for understanding how other people think and perceive you as a person. And so that has been a hell of a learning experience. For instance, I quite like shit posting, but it reflects terribly negatively on me and the project. So I've made a huge effort to not stir up things that are contentious just because I find it fun. So that's sort of one of the bigger ones. I've learned really an awful lot about the discipline of engineering, and probably problem-solving skills that I definitely didn't have coming into this. As I think I said to you when we spoke, between ourselves, I work. One of the reasons I do this is because it's very, very fun to work with people that you would never get the chance to work with in a regular organization, who are, a lot of our team members are just really pleasurable to work with and spend time with as people.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
yeah, so you just said one of your whys. So, yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to ask you. Like, beyond, of course, creating something successful and the joy of it and the journey, why are you doing this? Like, what drives you, what drives Hugo to wake up every morning and keep going forward, regard of all the obstacles that you might find?
I think ultimately I believe that we're building something of value. I just I really enjoy the process of coalescing people and capital and brain power and attention into something that is bigger than the sum of the parts. Because if you think about what Flare is, it's there's been a lot of brain power gone into it. Whether you like the protocol or not, I'm sure lots of people think it's a bunch of crap. There's been an awful lot of brain power gone into it. There's been reasonable amount of capital gone into it. There are an awful lot of people that care about Flare and use Flare and want Flare to be successful, and however they define that. And there's a huge amount of attention on Flare from lots of people, and the amazing thing is that you can take all those component parts, you can build this blockchain, and people transact on it. And the earliest indication I got of that was the coalescing of the FTSOs when we first started Songbird. This group of people who'd been chatting to me, on Telegram, came in and set up their FTSOs, and Tim Rowley's on this call, and he's one of them. So is Nick. Probably there's a few other. Watching this protocol that came from effectively mine and my co-founder's heads during COVID, where we wrote a paper about it, come into the world and start working, and for the price to form, and for it to be robust, and for us to be able to do an analysis paper on it that showed that it was better than other oracles, and showed that it had better uptime, and showed that it was less riggable than other oracles. That's probably one of the most rewarding things you can ever do in life, is to take something that you've thought about and create something that people use and is of value. And so I hope that answers the question.
Oh, 100%.
So, go for it.
Go ahead.
So, and then my next question would be, what have you learned about bootstrapping liquidity? I feel like the whole incentive are important, but are also risky. Like, what are some lessons that you have learned in that regard?
It's got to be targeted. It's got to be the right size. It's got to work the right way. But ultimately, you've got to have a good product at the end of it. If you don't have a good product, you can bootstrap all you like. You'll get a lot of mercenary liquidity for a short period of time. But you need things that are going to be, take that mercenary liquidity and make them stay because there's something of value there. I realize, what I say a lot, like, I say the word value a lot. And I think that's ultimately, what we're all trying to build towards, is a product that is useful and hence valuable to people.
Awesome. So I got a question about you had mentioned something we were talking about, how the SEC kind of the lawsuit and Ripple and how that kind of affected Flare. Has there been any other things that really have made you be cautious on when you do certain things with Flare that maybe we have not kind of put two and two together on why directions have gone the way they've gone just because of maybe regulations or something?
Um, I wouldn't say there's anything else. I mean, we've been very careful about how we market. Been very careful about what we say. Probably, in some cases over too careful. And also, we got a lot of criticism for not doing enough marketing. We are now doing a lot more marketing, especially as we're closer to having the full set of products that we want, on Flare. So I think I don't think it's been too many other obstacles, but obviously you've got to be careful, right? Like, one of the things we did with the Fassets, was that we stopped and we built in a optional KYC system so that it's there if there's ever an order that gets handed down that a decentralized protocol must do KYC. I hope that's not the case. I don't think decentralized protocols should have to do KYC, but if that ever happens, the capability for it to do that is embedded in the code. So we do think about these things a lot, and we think about how they can harm us in the future, even if they're not harming us now. And we try to engineer ways such that we can move forward smoothly without having to do anything radical.
Yeah, I think you're gonna get critics no matter what. Not running enough advertising, you're gonna get critics. Now you're running advertisement, you're gonna get critics about, well, who, you know, who's the ad for? What are you targeting? You know, all that stuff. So I think you're in a no-win situation when it comes to critics. So that'll always be there for you.
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned, actually, to come back to a previous question, was just to ignore the trolls. There's of course legitimate criticism, and we as an entity at Flare, we haven't done everything right, but there's also just a lot of people that just want to hate for whatever reason.
Oh, I've seen lots of those. Speaking of Flare, can you kind of, I think it's kind of gotten lost in the weeds, and I've had actually some conversations with some of the FTSO guys, some of the guys you even mentioned. Like, so what is kind of the overall structure of Flare? How is that structured? Because I think people have it confused, and maybe it's even evolved over time. So, can you kind of, yeah, I see you laughing for Dad, so I'm talking about you. But yeah, so how do you see that evolving, or where is it at currently?
Okay, so we have two main entities. The first is a foundation, and the parent company of that foundation is a Netherlands-based non-profit, and that received, and I'm not going to say the number because I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but that received a slug of the initial Flare tokens. We then have what we call Flare Labs, which is where the engineers sit. So all of the engineers and technical people at Flare work at Flare Labs. Now, Flare Labs is a private company, for-profit company, and the foundation contracts Flare Labs to do things like maintenance and upkeep of protocols like the FDC and the FTSO and the general code base, and lots of other things. And then Flare Labs is building its own product, which is the Fassets, which is essentially this trustless bridge for XRP, Bitcoin, Doge, potentially in the future. When you see Facet V2 paper, you'll understand that it would be applicable to many other tokens, especially coming from the XRP ledger.
Okay, so now on the Flare Foundation, which is the nonprofit, is that going to stay around or is that going to go away?
It's sticking around for the time being. I mean, it gives out grants. It does a lot of the stuff, like, so the marketing comes out of Flare Foundation. It does a lot of the stuff around tooling and wallets and RPC endpoints and all the stuff that isn't purely code. So there's an awful lot of things that need to exist for a blockchain to be usable, that aren't just smart contracts and core blockchain code.
So on that, I got a question about kind of how you guys do the rewards. So is that a very structured process with the rewards and stuff like that, or is it rigid, or is it kind of easy for people to apply for those grants out of curiosity when it comes to the developers?
Grants.
Grants, yeah.
It's an extremely structured process. We get approached by a lot of people. There's a huge thing in crypto of people doing what's known as grant farming.
Mm.
And so it's very easy as an engineer to kind of earn a living by grant farming blockchains. Build the same protocol 10 times for 10 different chains, and ultimately it's the community that lose. And we've made some mistakes in grants, but by and large, I think we've done well with them. So it's a highly structured process.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so That's another thing that it's been interesting how like sometimes Flare might do a shout out for a project that is developing on Flare, and then that doesn't necessarily mean that you guys are endorsing it. And I feel like that has been something that has come up consistently over
Yeah,
with the community.
I think like we do publicize products both that we've given a grant to and haven't given a grant to. We're generally proud that people want to build on Flare. It's not an endorsement that you should put any money into it.
100%. Yeah.
So I think one of the coolest things you guys do is like you come up with an idea, but then you have devs who come up with stuff that you've never even thought of. Like I said, I go back to the cyclo finance. Is there anything kind of
Mm-hmm.
unique that you would love to see that isn't really there yet? As the daily use for Flare.
Oh, absolutely. I can't give too much of this away without giving
Oh,
away
well, don't do that. Yeah.
Flare V2. Um, but we already have, let's say, five massive, massive in terms of how impactful they would be. Requests for proposals worked out. Um, you know, just to give you an example, this week we are doing a hackathon with Google Cloud in Berkeley, in California. It's around verifiable AI. One of our key um, outcomes of that hackathon will be to find a team to work with us to build something we call Flare AI Kit. So this would be a kit that allowed people to um, deploy on Flare AI agents that are verifiable. Today, one of the big problems that with AI agents is that sure you can use an agent, it's being hosted on someone else's servers. You have no idea what they're doing with the code in those servers. Theoretically, they could just stop using the code that you thought you signed up for and start, using pen and paper and give an output through the address that you've used the agent with. So ultimately, you really want verifiable artificial intelligence because you want to know that the model you're relying on is the model you're using, and you want that to be verifiable over the long term. You don't want to be using a great model today and someone manipulates that model down the line in order to basically take money from you by making you do bad transactions. And this is a problem. Like everyone rushes to do things and they end up with doing like a Web 2 kind of solution where it's centralized and trusted. And then they claim that they own AI. And it's sort of nonsense because everything we got into blockchain for is so that you can use the tools without having to trust the without having to trust the server that it's being run on. And this is why we're doing this hackathon. It's very important.
Very nice, Hugo. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the sovereignty of like your money, I think that's a very important aspect of crypto in general. And for me, Flare has been a great opportunity to explore that and to learn about DeFi and learn about so many other protocols and things that maybe before were a little bit scary for me. And I think that yeah, that's what I tell people. It's just like take the time to learn the technology, and regardless of how you feel about Flare is a great place to learn about all of these protocols, to try them out, to test them out, and then over that education that can be carried over to any other blockchain is very valuable in my opinion.
We'll try them on the Songbird first.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on Songbird? It's been a ride, right?
Sorry.
What are your thoughts on Songbird? Like, what are your plans, or how do you see that coming along?
I mean, it's going to continue to be the testing ground for our protocols. It's going to be a lot more protocols. Um, Fassets isn't where it stops, very clearly. So it's going to have a purpose for a long time to come. And of course, once we get out of, once everything's sort of up, fully running, it will become the governance hub for Flare. So the the lower house to Flare's upper house. And then I do play around with thoughts of giving a Songbird a very unique purpose. I haven't shaken out on anything there that I would think was interesting yet. I have a few ideas. But again, I couldn't implement that by myself. It would have to be a governance proposal, but is embedded into Songbird. But the community are welcome to throw up ideas for Songbird also. But regardless, it would be very valuable to all of us if Songbird's role as its testing ground was not taken away from it for any reason, because we're going to need it.
Right. I think it's
One of the challenges that I find.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna say I think it's already proven its value 10 times over. I mean, I've seen several issues that having it so a controlled environment really protected the users. I go back to when XRP launched their AMM, and then they had their issues. I mean, it was a lot longer process to fix. There was voting that needed to happen. I mean, it was not as smooth as having such a structured environment to do those tests in.
Yeah, and we found bugs in protocols through Songbird. We would not have found them through Coston. We would not have found them through auditors. It's a very valuable thing to have in the Flare ecosystem.
Oh, I agree. I
What
lost some Doge, and you guys, Flare gave it back to me in that part of that process. So 100% it worked out, and like I said, I love the fact that Flare gave me my money back as part of that process. It was great.
So I guess one of the issues with Songbird has been liquidity, and I guess that's what inspired B2 to come up. Like there's not enough. I know that, for example, Kinetic said that they wouldn't launch on Songbird because then there would be a completely whole ecosystem and market and liquidity that you need to build, and that's a challenge with having two networks. Do you see a workaround for that?
For lending specifically, no, unless someone wants to build a lending protocol on Songbird or we can't force developers to use Songbird. We can hint and suggest they do, but at the same time, we can't force them. Although I do wish Kinetic had. They wouldn't have had their issue earlier this year if they'd launched on. Well, they may not have had their issue earlier this year if they'd launched on Songbird. But I think there's regardless of the liquidity, there's we have found as an engineering team fantastic value in releasing the protocol on Songbird first. And if Songbird's only value is in order to make Flare more robust, then frankly, it's done its job. I don't think that's its only value, but if that is its only value, it's highly valuable.
Thank you so much, Hugo. Okay, does anyone from the community want to ask something to Hugo?
While we're waiting, I do want to ask, how does your family like Dubai? I mean, it's super nice out there, I hear.
I think Dubai is a wonderful place. It has upsides and downsides. One of the downsides being that it's very, very hot during summer. Another one of the downsides being that it's not structured like a European or East Coast city where it's walkable and you can just meander around the city for days. It's much more like LA in terms of you have to take a car everywhere. That's been probably my biggest my biggest sort of learning curve in Dubai is like you kind of go from place to place and you have very little sort of physical autonomy outside of that, which is interesting. I mean, I think they like it. I think they like the safety aspect. It's a very safe place. It's a very polite place. People are generally well behaved. the government enforces the laws, which is nice and seemingly rarer these days. So I have nothing but good things to say about Dubai.
It's interesting. I have a friend who moved from Russia area, and out there it's exactly opposite than it is in the U.S. He always told me it was safer in the city. So when he moved to the U.S., he actually moved downtown, which come to find out this is the exact opposite in the U.S. versus where it was where he grew up. So it's curious to see how that all works out.
That's quite funny. Yeah, I think Dubai's a wonderful place. It's a very, very different, type of living than I'm used to. It's probably the most multicultural place I've ever been to anywhere. Only a tiny percentage of the population are actually Emirati. Um, I've got some very good Emirati friends, and I got to say, everyone I meet in government or in industry here is absolutely, incredibly smart, um, very, very ambitious. And, one of the things I've really noticed here is that everyone genuinely loves the government and the ruler because the government and the ruler has made people's lives substantially better. If we had 1/10 of that in the UK, well, we'd have to have a different prime minister to start with, but that's not feasible. But if we had 1/10 of that in the UK, it'd be a much better country.
I couldn't agree more. CJ, man, what do you got for us?
Hey, fellas. So, listen, great spaces so far. So, Hugo, the thing for me that I've been most fascinated about with Fled Networks has really been, for me, it's been your journey as a CEO. I oftentimes on my live stream talk about your journey and how you've evolved as a CEO. And my follow-up question would be, well, first question is, kind of share with us what it's been like to be a CEO at Flare Labs. And the follow-up to that, I think, will speak to the first question, which is, why do you think builders are wanting to build on Flare? I admire your journey as CEO is because you seem to stick to the true crypto ethos of true decentralization, true security, and true scalability. Why do you think the builders are wanting to build on Flare? And share a little bit with us about your journey as a CEO.
Okay, so I think my journey as a CEO is very bizarre, and I think it's more bizarre in crypto perhaps than in any other area that I can think of. Because we started out as a couple of people, a Twitter account, and some ideas, and those things come together, and you scrabble around with venture capital firms raising money, and suddenly there's a large amount of expectation, both from the people that you've raised money from, and also from the people that are forming the nucleus of the community. So I'll take you back to 2020. Had this plan as to how to get Flare supported, which was, we were building, protocol that was for tokens that didn't have smart contracts. We're still building that, and we thought, well, okay, which protocol should we airdrop to? All protocols? Should we airdrop to Bitcoin and XRP and Doge and Litecoin and Stellar and all these kind of people? And then I thought, no, I think out of this group, the one that really needs smart contracts, the one that has the people that we use it. So, Bitcoin, I've always felt like, a lot of Bitcoiners are very Bitcoin maximalist. They're never going to touch anything that isn't Bitcoin itself. And I think that's broadly true. Litecoin, Stellar, fine, but perhaps too small to engage until, we've got a product, not going to really be, that beneficial in building the community and in these kind of things. And it came up with this idea of airdropping to the XRP ledger, and then thought, well, okay, so we're going to airdrop to a large amount of exchanges. How the hell do I get these exchanges to support this? And created quite a strong social campaign around getting the exchanges to support it, which was in almost all instances, with a few exceptions, incredibly successful. So suddenly that happened. Got this huge community. That really stepped everything up, not one gear, but 10 gears. And the growth you have to have as a CEO, from I'm scrabbling around with some ideas and some thoughts and to raise a bit of money, to get to, I'm now the sort of main voice in this community of people that have put their mind, their attention, and their time into looking at your protocol. How the hell should I behave? How should I act? What am I doing? What is the right route here? There's definitely been some adjustments I've made, not least in tone, but that's been one of them. With regards to keeping true to decentralization and those kind of things, I mean, that was where we started. I don't see any value in blockchain without decentralization. I just use the internet. Just Web 2 is like endlessly better, than using blockchain. If you don't care that they can close your account at any moment in time, or whatever it is that they can do, everything they can do. So that was that. And then, I think it's really interesting because so often you do feel when you build things that are decentralized, and the industry maybe doesn't value decentralization as much as they pretend they do. But then you have a conversation with a very, very large fund in the US, and they're like, yeah, we're really interested in your data protocols. And I say, why? I said, because we know how to make API calls. We don't need another protocol that allows us to make API calls, which is essentially what the competing data protocols do. We need a protocol that can make API calls, but then compare those API calls with the rest of their peers and make sure that the API call is reported correctly, and that the one that gets through and modifies people's balances on chain is in fact as close to correct as feasible. That really struck me like a bolt of lightning, and that was maybe 3 weeks ago. Kind of made everything worth it, because actually suddenly you see it's not just you that sees the value in decentralization. It's large entities outside of you and your community suddenly actually rallying 100 entities run by Tim Rowley and I'm not sure if you're still here, Four Dads, and the various things actually presents a substantially better product, and people can eventually see the value in it. So that's probably the best answer I can give you as to why developers are interested in Flare.
Awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead, Daniel. Do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks so much for hosting this space. Great conversation. There's a quote that says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." So I'd love to hear you talk a bit, Hugo, on how do you describe the Flare team culture, and what about the kind of culture is driving your vision forward, and what might be hindering progress? Thanks so much.
Oof, I have never heard that quote. I'm going to try and think about what it means for a minute. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, I think I get that. I mean, if I would interpret that the following way, that strategy is a week by week plan, maybe month by month, maybe quarter by quarter. But culture is like an embedded resilience within an organization. That means that you need to rely less on strategy because you have the organizational capabilities to achieve what you want to achieve without having to play lots of games and tricks and all that kind of stuff. And so I've described Flare's culture as generally one of amicability. I think the team generally get on with each other. I haven't ever witnessed a kind of blow up. We have had a few people in the past who, perhaps didn't fit the culture. I think camaraderie and, goodwill is very important when you're doing really hard things. That people's, so some of the things you have to appreciate about any blockchain, but especially blockchains that are doing what Flair's trying to do, is that in the process of what we're building, if we build things badly, we can destroy people's lives because the protocol can get hacked. And I think that puts pressure on the team. But at the same time, I think the team is somewhat mentally resilient to that because A, they're talented, B, they care, and C, we don't have a culture of let's just ship it and hope for the best. And, we have a culture of let's ship it on testnet, let's ship it on Songbird, let's ship it on Flare. Let's make sure that we do what we can so that when people come to use it, we know that we've done everything we can to make sure they don't lose the value that they've worked hard to accumulate. Hindrances. Well, of course, that culture also means that we're really fucking slow, which isn't great in an environment where everyone wants everything yesterday. And it can be very frustrating as a CEO to be so slow. It's actually that also makes strategizing and business development more complicated. But ultimately, we're in this for the I'm in this for the long run. I think most of the team members are in this for the long run. We have a low team turnover, and I think other things is we've taken time to reorganize teams where they're not working, redo our processes where they're not working. Those kind of things are things you learn on the fly. You might not know everything about a teammate, but then you might find their strengths, but you may also find that they have weaknesses, and you need to reorganize a team around the individuals within that team's strengths and weaknesses, and that can be hard when it's something that crops up and you weren't thinking about it before, and suddenly you notice it and you're like, well, okay, this is not going to be effective if I leave it running like this. I've got to stop what I'm focused on and reorganize this so it works better. But thankfully, we work with very good people who are very flexible and very adaptable. So I hope that answers your question.
I gotta jump in real quick. Say when you said culture, actually one of the people who messaged me and talked about it a little bit was they mentioned how good the culture was and how funny you are as a person in environments. Actually, so I think you might create some of that same culture. Whether you're a modest guy and you probably don't want to take any of the account for it, but from other people I've talked to, actually, you're quite fun to be around in lots of different environments.
Oh, good, because sometimes I think I might be an ogre. No, I often think that basically, if you're not having fun, you've got to enjoy it. Otherwise, you're going to end up hating it.
100%, 100%. Did anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask Hugo?
Yeah, one thing I have a lot of respect for you guys is how, even though you keep breaking expectations of people, you're still trying to do the right thing. And I think that that's something that I respect a lot. And that only gives me more trust that you guys are building something for the long run and not just to make a quick buck in the near future. And I respect that a lot.
Well, if we wanted to make a quick buck, we've certainly gone the wrong way about it.
I'm not even going to try to get your name wrong, Nib.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for holding the space. And my question is, Hugo, we're kind of almost transitioning into Q2 of 2025. And I know Flare has participated in a few conferences and things so far this year. Have you gotten any major takeaways from like maybe ETH Denver or ETH Oxford or any other conferences this year?
You know what? The Flare team have. I haven't. For the simple reason I've been very, very busy on a lot of other things. And, you know, I went to a couple of, many of the major conferences last year, and I walked away with the feeling, you know, that sitting there watching people's talks or, you know, wasn't a good use of my time. But in terms of networking, there are far better people at Flare to do it than me. And also the expense of conferences. So is very they're unbelievably expensive. And you know, I slashed our budget in terms of conferences, which is a good thing, as is reported that ETH Denver was an absolute sort of what's the word, sort of festival of nonsense. So you know, I go to the important ones. I'm going to go to Korea Blockchain Week. I'm going to go to Token 2049. ETH Denver, I went last year. It's too far to go for the value it presented. If I want to do business with people, I can call them up. I can go meet them in person. It's much better than a 5-minute meeting or a half an hour meeting at a conference.
Well, thank you, sir. Is there any other questions here? I don't want to keep Hugo too long
Well,
because I know it's
I think I
super
can.
late where
No,
he's at.
don't worry about that. I'm
Go ahead.
having fun.
Okay.
I think I can see Eri. We need to
Yeah.
give props to Crypto Eri here. I think
I don't know, man. She kind of left me off. She kind of left me hanging in her post, man. I felt
oh
kind of silly.
no,
She's like
I
I got
think
scored there. She cut me deep.
I've long history with Eri. I think Eri was the first person who ever did a podcast with me.
She has a lot of
Oh,
respect
that
for
is
you.
awesome.
Yeah, she has a lot of respect for you as well, Hugo. I just sent her a request if she wants to talk, and then I'm also having a stream with her this weekend, and I'm going to be showing her all of Flare DeFi. She's been very interested in learning, and she's been asking a lot of questions. So I'm very happy to see people from other communities show
No,
interest in the learning process.
I want to hear from the DeFi Montana. That person, I don't know whether they're male or female, although I would just presume male, given by the PFP, has some very interesting takes on the world. See if you can get them up.
Let's see.
DeFi Montana?
Got it. Invite to be a speaker. All right, I sent him an invite.
I have a comment, not really a question.
Go for it.
So earlier in the spaces, you mentioned something about bootstrapping the liquidity, and it's been one of the things that I have been really praising Flare Networks and yourself about. I think it's been awesome, and then it's an awesome long-term plan of creating. I know we like to say community. I like to call it raving fans, because from that you can get the choir. You know, that group of whatever amount of people is the choir that takes the message of Flood Networks to the congregation. And so I think for someone like myself who's done a lot of airdrop farming and et cetera, I think what you guys have done with that bootstrapping liquidity is genius in motion. So I just wanted to really, really commend you guys on how you've been handling
Good.
that.
Well, I think that's, you know, principally down to the design of our Flare, which you know, was designed by some talented members of our team plus an external consultant. One of the people on the team that really worked hard on it, two of the people on the team that really worked hard on it was Dhruv and Max Luck. Some of you will know both of those people or none of those people. But the design of our Flare is interesting because you earn our Flare. And when you earn it, you can you can basically immediately cash it in for 50% of its value, or if you hold it, it vests over time until you get 100% of your value, which gives people an interesting optionality on how they earn rewards in the protocol. If they're super mercenary, they get a 50% haircut. If they're interested in the protocol over the long term and they think that what they're using is valuable and they think that the protocol is expanding, they can keep it and they get a larger amount of value.
I don't know what happened. Everybody went quiet.
Very quiet. Anyway, I think it looks like we've reached the end of our speakers.
Okay, so I have a question. Okay, I have two questions. One is Flare Networks actively looking for more VC investors?
No.
Okay, and then why didn't we saw this Google Cloud X Flare hackathon advertised in more places like CoinDesk or Cointelegraph?
It's an interesting one. So let me give more clarity on the VC thing. We don't want to raise any more money. VCs do, investment at very advantageous terms for themselves. So, we would simply be giving away larger portion of tokens, probably from the foundation. That limits our ability to give grants and all that kind of stuff. So we don't think that we need any more VC funding at the moment. Maybe if we have some mega project down the line, or need to do something else, with regards to maybe some of these blockchains seem to gather very, very sizable war chests. In reality, I think they're just cashing out through the back door. But you saw that without TOS, and it was kind of unpleasant. But anyway, I digress. I think there's you don't want to be beholden to too many people. And you also don't want to raise at a too high or a too low valuation. So at the moment, we're not courting VC money. The second question was on Google Cloud Hackathon. Yeah, I would have liked that to be advertised more. To be frank, we did have a bit of a delay on approval on advertising copy with Google. We can't put anything out without them approving it. So their team seems to take a reasonable amount of time to do turnaround. Simply reduced our capability to market it. But I think broadly it's picked up a very big following. I expect that there'll be somewhere around 300 people involved between on-site and off-site. So I don't think you'd want that many more than that.
So I have a question that kind of goes in a different direction. Do you have something to follow up there, Will, before I ask that?
No, go for it. Go for it. I was going to ask something else as well.
I've seen, like I said, posts from the XRP community and stuff, and it seems like I'm thinking of Joel, Katz, and them. Where some of the stuff they asked for is already being developed. So is there not but then you see somebody like John Deaton who recognizes what's going on at Flare. Can you explain like that relationship, or is there one at all? Is it just kind of a mutual understanding of what do they know and don't know would be great, I think.
So Ripple are a large organization, and we talk to various members of their team. So, I think some of our engineers met with I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, so I'll probably butcher it, but Miss Vadari, or I hope that's right, sort of lead engineer, and has been doing a lot of the virtual machine work at Ripple. And I talk to the RLUSD team, I talk to the markets team every so often. We have a Slack channel with Ripple, so there's good information flow with them, but I'm not certain that always that information propagates to various places. I'm also certain that that Ripple probably want a lot of their own things on their own chain. So that's means that they're going to be pursuing those avenues. Flare presents a particular set of utility. I think it's highly developed, and I think it'll be a value to all of the tokens that don't have smart contracts that come to Flare.
So following up on that topic, somebody was saying today that, or as I see it, Flare is trying to connect different blockchains, but it's not necessarily working on an interoperability anymore. So how do you see those two parts fitting together?
So I think it depends how you define interoperability. On the whole, we're not working on bridges, other than the bridges for XRP, Bitcoin, and Doge. Bridging is kind of a space that is kind of hugely competitive. Frankly, across most of the blockchains has kind of been won by Layer 0 and Stargate, with many of the other like multi-chain bridges. There are distinct bridges, for instance, the bridge between Ethereum, for Hyperliquid has been massive because Hyperliquid has been very, very popular. But of the general interoperability bridges, really by far and away, Stargate is the largest. Stargate and Layer 0 just like eclipse everyone else there. So I don't really want to play in bridging because I don't think it's a valuable area for us to play in. One, I don't think it's not that valuable in and of itself. Like bridges don't make very much money, and tend to have if you look at them, they don't really come in the top 50 of anything. And secondly, it's hugely competitive and frankly an area that has already been won. There's a whole nother type of interoperability, which I think is absolutely unbelievably fascinating. And that is where you start getting into things like chain abstraction. And again, I say a lot more on it in the blog article I'm writing for Flare V2.
Do you have any, are you in conversations with Axelar?
No.
Is there a reason why not? I know that right now Layer 0 and Axelar are most like the main bridges. And I guess Layer 0 is, yeah. So is there any reason why not?
Well, the only place that Axelar could serve us would be with XRP. And I greatly prefer Fassets. And for anything else, Stargate has far superior liquidity.
We had a question from Four Dads FTSO. When Songbird validators?
Ooh, that is a question that I don't know the answer to. I think I really don't know the answer to that. That's not been on my radar for a long time.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's it. Ric Flair, do you want to ask something?
Yeah, just a quick question for Hugo. Can you give us any insight on the conversation you had with Charles Hoskinson from Cardano, or is that not possible?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak out of turn, but it was a very good conversation. He's a really nice guy. And, we are we have a number of channels with their teams. We're looking at ways that Flare's protocols can be of service to that community. I think the data protocols can be valuable to Cardano. I think the staking service could be valuable to Cardano. I think the data connector could be valuable both to Cardano and to their new protocol Midnight. So but I think that'll take a long time for anything to materialize, if indeed it does.
All right, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I did have a follow-up question of we'd kind of heard about the red date thing, and they were somebody was just curious how that went, or if it was still any ongoing testing, or if they're just waiting for regulations and what they'll do from there.
Well, yeah, so they're waiting for regulations. So there's like a big opportunity in Hong Kong. Hong Kong are going to be creating a regulated. Hong Kong have said they're going to be creating a regulatory environment for stablecoins, and they have said that they will do it by the end of this year. And so that test was a nice way for us to kind of understand the market a little bit. I have to be very careful with what I say, because there's a lot of politics involved in that part of the world, but I think Red Data are a great partner, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
I think you say that, but it's funny. I think there's a lot of politics happening in the U.S. too right now, so it's almost like anywhere right now.
Yes, but it's a very different environment, right? Yeah, you have to be very, very careful how I wouldn't want anyone to think that the Hong Kong government has blessed Flare as a stablecoin platform. That is something that the Hong Kong government would be very, very angry if we said that. But obviously we have done a test with Red Date under a sort of regulatory sandbox.
Okay, I have another question for you, Hugo.
Go ahead.
How do you perceive the current cycle based as your experience as a professional trader?
I don't think trading is any. I don't think my experience as a trader has any bearing on my understanding of crypto. Basically, I think crypto is a multi-decade secular bull market with very bearish pullbacks in the middle, or at various intervals. Obviously, there's a lot of macro going on right now with regards to tariffs and that kind of stuff, and a lot of risk off, and asset prices, falling in value dramatically, because the one thing markets really like is stability. The one thing markets really, really don't like is uncertainty. So the tariffs call into question everyone's assumptions in their models about what things should be worth. Everyone has to go away and update their models. And at the moment, they appear to be having to update their models every couple of hours. And so rather than update your models, just sell the asset and wait till you see some clarity. So I think that's where we are in the cycle. I think, my guess, and I'm not original in saying this, is that there's a sort of effort on to kind of force a interest rate reduction in the US, which I think will ultimately lead to an asset price explosion. So, that would also probably be similar for crypto. But that's,
yeah, I agree with you.
Just a guess.
Yeah. Okay, so next question. What would be the trigger for Flare to move to USA? I don't know if you want to answer this or if you can. And what could he really consider it, and what would be the trigger for the move? Thanks.
Depends what move to USA means. I don't know what any of those definitions mean. Does it mean we have to set up a US company? Does it mean does that company have to be the main company of Flare? Do I have to move there? Do all of our employees have to move there? So at the moment, there's zero definition around, the sort of the favorability with which US companies would be viewed in the market. As definition becomes available, we will obviously adjust our plans according to that. I have, no particular desire to move because I'm moved 3 years ago and I don't really want to move again. Moved from the UK to Dubai. But obviously, if it was a business necessity, then I would have to start thinking about where in the US I would like to live.
Brett, you got a question you want to ask me?
Yeah, I actually have a question for Hugo. I was part of the original snapshot for XRP. Believed in Flare from the very beginning. I've always had confidence it's going to go places and still do. So much so that I sold my house in 2022 and put all the equity into Flare and Songbird, mostly into Flare and Songbird. But I have a question. So as far as Flare and Songbird ratio over the last 14 to 16 months, give or take, the ratio I've noticed has bounced back and forth between one Flare to two Songbird or one Flare to three Songbird. And ever since the post about that Fassets wouldn't be on Songbird permanently, a lot of people got flooded out of Songbird. And the ratio since then has been about 3.5 Songbird to one Flare. I guess I'm not asking for a question about price. I guess my question is more along just the ratio. If Hugo, if you see that the ratio will go back to the range that I was in before, because as far as fundamentals, I haven't seen anything change as far as Songbird, its purpose and what it's here for.
I have no idea how to answer that question. Not least because I don't know. It's difficult to know what fundamentally drives these things. So how to give you some information that I think. Look, I think I've said on this call everything I want to say about what Songbird's role is, about what its value is to the ecosystem, not its financial value. And I think that it's going to have a long-term role as a testing network for the protocols that are built on Flare. The Fassets, obviously, and I think there's reason when we get to Fassets v2 that there's no particular reason why that they would need to be not on Songbird. I can't particularly see a reason for that. Well, the fundamental reason why Fassets, in their current form, would move off of Songbird would simply be that the agents don't want to have collateral both on Songbird and on Flare. They want to concentrate their collateral where the action is. If you remove the collateral component of the Fassets by having a better technology stack, which is where we're going with Flare version 2 and Fassets version 2, then I don't see a particular reason why they couldn't be on both networks. That said, I can't see a reason why you would bridge XRP in the long term to Songbird rather than to Flare, because Flare does have a more developed ecosystem. I think the long-term role for Songbird is as the lower house of governance for Flare, where governance proposals can come from the community. get voted on, and then when the winning proposal can be passed up to Flare for a vote. I think that's probably the best long-term role I can think of for Songbird at the moment, although there may well be other ideas or paths that we look at over the long term. So sorry I can't answer your question on the ratios. I don't know whether it's going to return to a 2-to-1 ratio, but that's about as much
Sure.
information as I have.
Well, I appreciate your answer. And again, I know that's really hard to answer, but I just don't see the. To me, it didn't make sense how many people were flooded out of Songbird because of that information, which we all knew that Songbird, what its purpose was from day one.
Yeah. The problem is if people create conspiracy theories around things, which is a seemingly natural thing in crypto, then things can be misvalued.
Human emotion. Good luck figuring that one out. I don't think we've got that quite figured out.
Yeah.
I think Hugo's still struggling with it himself.
Indeed.
Okay, Hugo, so here's another question for you. You said a few days ago, a few weeks ago, that most likely XRP would launch in the first 2 weeks of March. And then do you know if the amount of liquidity or the amount of FXRP that can be minted would it be similar or greater than what we saw on Songbird, at least in the initial, in the very first part?
It's it's always going to be greater on Flare, but there'll still be caps at the beginning because we don't want anything to happen that we're unsure about, and it would be a new protocol on Flare. You wouldn't want that protocol to be putting really excessive amounts of value at risk until it's shown that it can that it can operate safely for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure the
And then,
validator who got liquidated is very happy that it was fine. I'm sure he was glad there
Yeah,
was
look,
no
I can't tell you how important it is to myself and our team that we can wake up and look in the mirror and say, I've done everything I can to build this protocol, and I have tried every possible way to make sure people don't lose their hard-earned money. Like that is, I was in, I was in a hedge fund before I was at Flare, and one of the things you kind of learn is fiduciary responsibility. You have a responsibility when people's money is at play, that not to lose their money. Now, I can't guarantee that with a protocol because there can always be things we've missed, but we really do try our absolute best to to make sure that they are as when we launch them that we have done everything we can to get them to the point where barring an asteroid hitting the world, we think they're safe. It doesn't mean that they're safe. It just means that we've done everything we can.
Totally. Yeah, that's the best you can do. So then my next question, without going into details with B2, because I know that you said that you will give more information, will FXRP V1 and FXRP V2 be the exact same token, or will there be like a migration process,
So
or you don't
at
know
the
yet?
moment, I mean, there's design aspects going on, but at the moment it looks like it'll be the same token. We would like it would be desirable that it is the same token because you don't want to have to migrate.
Amazing. Thank you so much. CJ, you have another question.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
still
just
good on time, Hugo?
Let's give it 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes.
More.
Perfect. CJ, go ahead.
yeah, man. So I'm Hugo. I'm really looking forward to DeFi and AI on Flare networks. Can you share with us? What do you see? What's that look like for Flare networks, DeFi and AI? Anything you're more excited about than another?
Well, I want to see what people build in the hackathon. My concept of AI is as a tool to help people do things. I'm sort of more interested in like being able to write into ChatGPT or a ChatGPT-like system. I want to swap some USDT for this, and then I want to get it over to this network, and I want to put it in this protocol. That's the bit of AI that interests me. It's like taking the burden from the consumer of having to figure out how to do all those transactions. We're a very long way from being able to do that because, well, the industry is a very long way from being able to do that. Flare is probably less far away than the rest of the industry from being able to do that, simply because I think we have a viable, verifiable AI strategy. And just to bang on about the verifiable aspect of it is, let's say you used an AI agent to try to achieve that thing. First of all, if you wanted to actually achieve that, you'd have to give it some private keys. Well, you absolutely can't just hand over your private keys to a server controlled by someone else. So that's the best you could get is a list of transactions to input into a wallet currently. Or if you did hand over your private keys, you'd be losing all your money at some point. And then you also wouldn't know what you wouldn't know from day to day what machine learning algorithm is being run and whether it's been optimized to prejudice your transaction so that the person running it can make money from you. And so what we're trying to achieve with the verifiable AI and its integration into Flare's DeFi is the ability to hold your keys safely, so that it can hold private keys safely, and therefore you don't have to make the transactions, and that the AI is safe, i.e. it's the same one that you thought you were signing up to, and it continues to be the same one you thought you were signing up to.
Very cool.
So
Very cool.
I really hope that answers your question. I'm interested in the ease of use aspects of AI. Other people are interested in, can I create an AI that manages a portfolio? I always think those are going to be slightly crap.
Yeah, I would be interested in actually being able to build something using AI. I don't know how far or at what point the tools could be there that you could, like, I have an idea and I want to deploy it and I use AI to.
I don't think I'm not sure why you would need verifiable AI for that, because you could just use an existing machine learning algorithm to create solidity code, then you can look through the solidity code, then you can deploy it yourself. I mean, maybe there's someone smarter than me that can figure out why that would need to be verifiable, but ultimately that's between you and the AI. Whereas when you've got money at play, that's, I mean, not to say that I think you should create a smart contract using an LLM. I absolutely don't think you should. They're not very good, and you'd be missing all the security steps that would be necessary. But I'm not sure why you need the verifiable bit. Chat with Dinesh on that. So in essence, yes, you're a very, very long way from being able to safely use AI to create a program.
Yeah, even Grok's going to leave you some areas to do a lot of extra stuff with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a perfectly good tool to get a start on it, or maybe if you find a bug in your code, to say, why is there a bug in my code? You might get some insight, you might not, but I certainly wouldn't leave it there. I certainly wouldn't use it for deploying a contract. I mean, one of the other things I'm very interested in AI is like sort of what we call consensus learning, which is the ability to get lots of models together to kind of create a sort of global model, a form of ensemble learning. It's a very interesting area of research.
Awesome.
Hugo. Well, thank you so much for this, man. This was incredible. So much information that I want to listen again and digest. So thank you so much for your time and for answering all these questions.
That was my absolute pleasure. It was really fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hugo.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now I do got to ask, could we get you back on here in 4 or 6 weeks for some more nice information?
4 to 6 weeks. Let's see. Fairly soon, yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Hugo.
See ya. Be well.
Have a
Thanks
good
a
day,
lot.
guys.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much. Good
Thanks.
day.
Bye.